physically in the same location as you. We're going to talk about communication. We're going to talk about planning work. As much as people hate actually working, it does need to get planned. If you just let everybody do it willy-nilly, it's not going to work right. And then we're going to talk briefly about some development practices, and we'll go from there. So there are two types of communications, as you guys all know. You got real-time communications and non-real-time. Again, I apologize. This slide is non-real-time communication is going to be your permanent, semi-permanent documentation, useful when targeting the team members that are not currently working. If you're dealing with people who are located overseas, they're obviously not going to be up all the time that you're up, or if they are, you need to tell them to go to sleep. Some examples of this are email and a document repo such as Google Drive or Wikipage or something like that. These are great for things that have to happen when they're offline. They're great for permanent communication. So if you have documentation that needs to happen, great for it. Real time is where it's at. Where you really want to do this when working with your team is real time. It allows you to have a dialogue and troubleshooting. If you've ever tried to troubleshoot somebody over email and you've gone 37 emails deep, you know how terrible that is. Real-time communication lets you do that. It's especially great when bringing on new people because it's much easier to take 10-minute phone call, 10-minute video conference and show them and walk them through than spend 3 hours emailing back and forth. It also provides that personality. When you're a distributed team, whether you're working from home, remote, or whether you're in an office and you're the only person in your office and everybody else is halfway across the country, halfway across the world, you lose that personal touch. By giving this real time, whether it's text or video, you get a feeling of a personality. I know I write differently when I'm writing an email versus when I'm talking to somebody on chat. And that's just because emails have that kind of non-real time. I don't have that personal connection. I have more of a structure to it. The real time, I don't have to worry about that. And real time is less likely to be ignored. I know when I log in the morning, I have 100 emails I got to go through. And I go through those real quick, and I reap out every one that I don't think I need. Some of them I will shelve to look at later in the day, and I look at the top 3 or 4 that I need to read. And I know that I have missed some critical communication that way. Real time is a lot less likely to happen. If I'm talking to you on a video conference, or I'm talking to you on a chat system, I get that feedback. You can say, hey, can you look at this? And they will say yes. If I send that email, I'm just sending it off into the ether, and who knows if they're going to actually respond or if they actually read it. You get that real-time back and forth. Some examples of these are going to be your video conferencing. This is BlueJeans or Google Hangouts, screen sharing, chat, which is my go-to. There's a thing called IRC. It's Internet Relay Chat. It's been around forever. There is a Salesforce IRC channel that I hang out in, and we do all sorts of work and help people all the time. Another example, one of the uprising ones is Slack. Slack is great because it's available on pretty much every device you have, and it's free. The only downside of Slack is that it's hosted by somebody else, so keep that in mind. They do have paid ones where you can do some larger groups and things of that nature. And then things like real-time collaboration. If you've never heard of Etherpad or something like Etherpad, it allows you to, as a group, collaborate on documents. So I don't like the term documents because I think of Google Drive has real-time collaboration on documents. Etherpad is more like if everybody was in just a text editor and just typing stuff in. So it's great. We use it for our plannings and for our retrospectives and things, which I'll talk about coming up with planning, where everybody goes in and types in all their thoughts and they put them in line and it's just all there and then we go through it. And Etherpad, like the name suggests, it's kind of the ether. Like it doesn't necessarily have to hang around. It's great to get text in, get a complete thought, and then we cover everything over. Sometimes we copy that pad off to a more permanent place. Sometimes it just gets thrown away and then we go on with our lives. Any questions on communication? Oh. One of the other things about having distributed teams is we do daily meetings. These are kind of difficult if you have some team, depending on where they're located, because it could be the middle of the night, like here in North Carolina, teams over in Australia, that's the middle of their night. So the daily meetings help everybody know what's going on with everybody else. So our stand-up meeting consists of what I did yesterday, what I'm doing today, and if I have any blockers. This helps me know what everybody else on my team is currently working on, because if I don't have these daily meetings, I don't know if Bob has been, just playing solitaire all day or, what he's working on. And knowing what he's working on may determine what I decide to work on, or if we're crossing paths and we're like, hey, Bob, don't forget about this. And by having that daily communication, I can make sure that he doesn't forget about this, or he doesn't, create some giant security hole that he just didn't think about, because he doesn't nobody can know every part of the entire system, especially when you get to these large systems. And so by having these daily meetings, if you have multiple people who know everybody collectively knows everything, you can help kind of steer people. It can be non-real time, but it's way better if it is. We do have times where, people get sick, unfortunately. We still ask them to email in their 3 things: what they did yesterday, what they're doing today, and what they're doing tomorrow. And somebody on our team will read off that email and say, this is what Bob is working on today. And so that gives them, the team, a context, and then we move forward from there. And then we have weekly/regular communication, which I will talk about these a little bit more coming up, but grooming, retrospectives, plannings, these happen on a fairly regular schedule, and this allows as a group to have another meeting. And I know more meetings is not always good, but these meetings are short. The daily meeting with, we've got 10 or 12 people on our team, takes no more than 15 minutes. And it happens every day at the start of the day. We have some of our people who are located in India. They have to stay up a little bit later, but it's a 15-minute meeting that they have every day. Everybody keeps on track, and then they can go to bed. Or if they're sick or they have to take care of the child, they email in, and we just kind of move on with life. These weekly regular meetings are longer, but we do try to break them up to work around other people's schedules. So we have some people that we'll have, the grooming one we'll have twice. We'll have one for the folks that are in one time zone and one for the folks in the other, and somebody will volunteer, and it kind of changes to be in both to bring everybody's thoughts around. So the biggest thing for communication is keep everybody talking, keep everybody working with each other. Don't let anybody just sit alone in a dark office somewhere, and make sure that they're there. A lot of this, if you've done any agile training or any of that stuff, these are very agile processes. And agile is great when you're dealing with people co-located. The daily stand-up meeting works great. But once you start moving outside and start moving to different time zones, that's where the daily phone call and the daily all stand around a desk and talk starts to break down. So there are ways to kind of move with this. And the video chat is a godsend, because you can see the people that you work with, and you can read their facial expressions way better than you can listening to a phone call and listen to somebody drone on like I am.
Can you do anything for tracking work? I mean, we're using Kanban, we're using Jira. It makes it really nice to have a visual representation. I would imagine if you had groups that are outside, at least you can see their progress, especially if they were working last night. Go to bed, you see it in one progress. You wake up the next morning, it's moved over.
Yep.
It's got to feel good.
So the question is about tracking work. And I'm going to talk about that here in a second. But yes, we use Rally to track our work. And that is part of our daily stand-up. We have somebody with the screen up, and they share that to everybody. And we have, pull up that person's view, and we can see whatever task they're supposed to work on. and they can say what they completed. If they happen to forget to log in the day before, we can at that time mark it as completed if they forgot, and see that progression. And that does help too for the people who are like either can't make it, or the people that are again remote. If they want to look at that same view, then everybody can see what you're working on, which takes me into planning.
Real quick,
Yep.
how are you keeping the chatty Cathy part of the stand-ups down? I mean, and this isn't necessarily remote at all. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
everywhere.
So the question is, how do you keep the chatty people in line for these calls? It is really, really tough, and you have to have a person who is in the Scrum Agile model. You have a Scrum Master. They're the person. They need to be the one that says, okay, what we typically will do if somebody starts rambling on, we're like, okay, let's take that separate. It doesn't affect everybody. It's not something that this is a good time to talk about. Let's take it offline. Let's move it to, anybody who wants to hang around afterwards and talk about it can hang around. Everybody else can go.
I just have a really hard time keeping.
It's a tough thing. You have to have that taskmaster. You have to have the person that says, no, just put the foot down. We've been a team long enough that we will kind of self-police, so we don't have to have that Scrum Master person to do that anymore. There's one guy on our team that is very bad about it, and we all the time are like, okay, let's move on. And he's learned, he doesn't do it intentionally. He's just very passionate about some things, and he will just kind of go off on a tangent. And we're like, okay, let's take it elsewhere. Yep. So planning, especially with distributed teams, is super important. If you have everybody co-located, it's a little easier to pivot and say, I'm going to turn to the person in the desk next to me and say, I'm working on this today, or I decided I need to do this instead. And that communication happens really easily when you're co-located. When you're distributed, you get the problem of, okay, I don't know what the person over in London is working on because they're not right next to me. So getting into doing a planning of some sort. We do a 2-week work sprint and a 1-week hardening sprint. So we do all of our development and admin work in a 2-week period, and then we take a week of doing of making sure everything we did in the 2 weeks is good, and then we move on to the next sprint. And so we plan all that in advance.
What did you call the 1 week one that you follow?
It's called a hardening sprint. And so in our hardening sprint, especially for that's where most of our quality assurance, our QA work happens. So at that point, everything should be stable, and then our QA person will work on it, and then we will move it up through the environments, and I'll talk about that environment moving in a little bit. And so that's what we do during that hardening sprint.
Patrick, I don't know if it's relevant now or
Yep.
maybe you'll cover this later in your session, but planning-wise, you talked about Rally, you talked about using Slack. Maybe it would be helpful if you could give some examples of why you've chosen both of those versus there's a lot of other providers out there like Asana or Trello. And what are some of the tools you use to structure both of those platforms to effectively run distributed teams?
Yep. Okay. So the question was about tooling. I will talk about that a little bit. If I don't cover it, remind me, and I will come back to it. I think there's a slide in here about that. Like I said, this is the first time it's had slides, so I don't know the slides as well as I probably should. Again, planning helps you know what you're going to do for the next iteration. It helps with that coordination. Like if I know that my team member is going to be working on the same thing, like let's say I've got something to deal with accounts and I've got to write a really complicated trigger for accounts, and I know that my teammate is also working on something with accounts, I might schedule my work a little bit differently. Like I might go to him and say, hey, can you do your account work first and let me know when you're done and it's committed, and I will then do my account work. So we're not stepping on each other's toes, we're not fighting. And planning helps you kind of be able to lay out your timeline. So I can move things around, and again, it'll let everybody know what's going on. And I cannot stress it enough. It's super important to just know what's happening. if you take nothing else away from this entire thing, figure out what everybody in your team is doing, if not every day, close to it, and you will be leaps and bounds ahead. It doesn't matter what tool you use, just figure out what everybody's doing every day, and it'll help with easing distributed work. So, on to the nitty-gritty stuff. This works for us. This may not work for you. This should give you an idea of what works. And to give you a little bit of background, at Red Hat, we have 4 main offices located all around the world, probably another 24 or so, all scattered throughout the world. We have developers in Raleigh, we have developers in London, we have some in Pune, and we have some in China, and that's just for our support Salesforce team. That's just us. So we have a lot of people doing a lot of stuff, and if you've ever tried to do development on a single development sandbox with more than one person, you know it is a nightmare. You're going to step on everybody's toes. You're going to delete work that somebody else did. So getting everything in source control is a must. Now, I'm not going to recommend a specific source control Git to anybody, but pick one that works for you. You know, Git and Git, Subversion, CVS. Pray to God you don't use CVS, but some people still do. Get it in somewhere that is going to stay. And source control is great because if you goof something up, you always have that older version. You can roll it back. You can bring it in. You can do it with a hosted thing like GitHub or Bitbucket or any number of GitLab. There are hundreds of them out there. You can do something internal. We host our own Git server, and we do all of our deployment from that Git server. It doesn't matter. Get it in something that will stay, and that way you can roll it back. The other great thing about using a decent source control system, CVS is not good at this, but you can tag things. You can say this is a segment of work and this is what we're going to be releasing. And then anybody who adds new things, you're not blocking people from adding new things because the new things don't make it into that tag. If I say, okay, all of my development work is going to be done on Friday, I tag on Monday. When Monday happens, I'm not blocking the rest of my developers to do work because they can keep working and they know that it's whatever thing after Monday is not getting released until we move forward. We do some automated deployments. We do some very, I don't want to say sneaky things, but we do a lot of automation as much as we can. We try to keep everybody out of having to do anything related to deployments. Unfortunately, there are still some things that you have to do manually in Salesforce. I've opened more than my fair share of ID Exchange for things that can't be done automatically to get them to be able to do automatically.
Go load them up.
Yeah. So our typical development workflow is every developer has their own personal developer sandbox. Now these are your not free, but the light developer sandboxes. They are forked off of our production instance, and that's where we live. Most of the time that works great. You don't have a lot of data in development sandboxes. You're just trying to work things out. So you don't need to have a full instance of every bit of data in your production. We have our local instance of the Git. You push to your sandbox, you pull from your sandbox, you do all your work in your sandbox, and when you're done, whatever you're going to submit, you push that out. The little line there, it says 3, that is pushing it to the remote Git. Once it hits remote Git, it is out of somebody's personal hands to be doing any deployments. This is where the magic of automation happens. The push, we have 3. Well, we have more than that, but we have 3 full sandboxes, and we work all the way up this chain. You can take this diagram and cut it anywhere you want to fit your needs. So if you don't have a full sandbox, you don't have to use a full sandbox for your development environment. but please try to get some sort of central development environment. Whether that is just another, developer light sandbox off your production that has just some data in it, have a place where all of your developers code, all of your admins code, whether that be point and click or adding things to objects, everything gets into that Git and everything gets pushed to a sandbox. And that is where you should be testing, is in the sandbox that is going to be as close to what you're getting in production as possible. You notice something I did say there. All of your admin work gets into version control. If you're having admins doing things directly in production, that's fine. But make sure it also gets into your version control system. I know a lot of admins are scared of things like Git and scared of getting that data down. It's not that hard. If you're comfortable with it, take the half hour. If you need a day, take a day, sit down with admins, show them how to do it. Most of the stuff they're going to do is going to be pulling object down, maybe pulling down some workflows, and that stuff doesn't require them to really do anything more than pull, look at it, does it look right, okay, and push it off. We keep everything we can into Git. Nothing goes to production without it being in Git first. We have some, obviously there are some exceptions when you have to get something in right then, but the second thing they do after they do it directly in production is put it into Git. And that way we don't overwrite it when we go to production. Because if it's not there, you're going to delete that field. You're going to remove that workflow, deactivate it, whatever, and somebody's going to be unhappy. And this again goes back to the daily meetings. If you didn't tell somebody that, I did this in production during that meeting, and it just all of a sudden disappears whenever you do your release, nobody's going to know who did it or why it was done, and now you just have end users that are angry because what worked before your production push now no longer works. So as part of our hardening sprint, at the about midway point, we take our tag and we push it to our QA environment. The QA environment, we have two, QA and stage. Stage is a little bit redundant for us, but that's just because it matches our other environments that we integrate with. So we integrate with 3 different environments plus production. So we try to keep that the same, so that way they can hook to their stage environment hooks to our stage Salesforce environment, and we don't have to worry about things getting kind of wonky when their stage is talking to our QA and their QA is also talking to our QA. Then things get a little hairy. We do all of this as automated as possible. Somebody still has to go in and say, this tag is getting pushed to QA. This tag is getting pushed to stage, but it's really just filling in a box and hitting go. And everything gets deployed. We run all of our tests with every deployment to any of these environments. With our development environment, we run every test in our org twice a day, and it gets emailed to the entire team if there's any test failures. And those tests take about 3 hours to run, 4 hours, I think. It's ridiculous. We set it up to make sure that everybody knows. That again, we emailed the entire list, and it's brought up the next day during our daily stand-up. If there was a failure and somebody hasn't already said, I got it, it's brought up during the saying we had test failures. Who's in charge of that? Who is doing it? Make somebody accountable for that.
Question.
Yes.
What about sandbox refreshes and the frequency of them? I sell them all the time, trying to get people to explain partial dev and full and how that impacts your work.
Yep. So the question was about sandbox refreshes. Developer sandboxes, as you may or may not know, can be refreshed pretty much every day. I think you got like a 24-hour period that you can't refresh, more than enough for most development instances. My personal developer sandbox, I looked yesterday, Hasn't been refreshed since 2014. But it is still up to date with production because as part of the workflow, which I don't cover here because this is not a continuous integration and continuous deployment talk, but part of the workflow is whenever I start a story, I do a complete push from Git, and that goes into my sandbox, and now my sandbox matches what's in production. Those things that I talked about that you cannot do with automated deployments, we have a running document that is our manual changes document. And anytime somebody adds that to it, they put who is in charge of that manual change, getting to each one of those environments, who's going to be in charge of that manual change on release day, and then they email the team and say, hey, there's steps to do this manual change in this document. You're going to have to do it or your sandbox won't work. And then it's up to that. For our larger things, I think we try to refresh about every 6 months, sometimes a little bit longer than that. But that's not because the Salesforce limitation on when you can refresh those sandboxes. That's because we have about 6 other teams that work off of our sandbox. Not going to ruin somebody's day by doing a refresh and coordinating password resets and coordinating all of this stuff. One thing that I will throw out there just as a word of wisdom from some try to find a way to obfuscate email addresses. We have a job that runs actually daily now that goes through contacts, and if they're not a redhat.com address, we convert them to a redhat.com address. We actually have a mailing list that essentially all of the email addresses in those contacts go to that mailing list because we have sent emails to customers from sandbox environments that we did not mean to, and it was because somebody was doing testing that was not part of our team, and they rightfully thought this is a development environment. Email shouldn't go out. They will. There are other ways around that, other things you can do, but data sanitization is a good thing you can do. Again, full copy sandboxes are full copy. Everything that is in your production comes down. So that's going to be your contact email addresses. That's active workflows. That is, if you have custom settings that have data that you're pulling that is sending things to other places, those all happen.
Isn't there an idea on the idea exchange for taking care of those emails and sandboxes?
There probably is. As Sarah so wonderfully pointed out, there's an idea exchange about making sure this kind of crap doesn't happen in your sandbox. Please find it, upvote it,
Use multiple logins.
yes. If,
My question is with the deployments.
yep.
So with the distributed team, how do you coordinate deployments? Do you
So.
do it over the weekend?
So the question was, with distributed teams, how do you coordinate deployments? We have a gentleman that is located in London that has either gracefully accepted or just been thrust upon him. He is the person that does our deployments. And we deploy roughly every 3 weeks to our production. We could shorten that time frame down, but it just works with what's best. It works best with our team, with our 2-week sprint and our 1-week hardening. We release every 3 weeks. If we have something that has to go out sooner, we can get that out. We have somebody from each one of our geos that knows how to do the releases. They may not be comfortable with it, but they at least know how to muddle their way through it if they have to do a super hot fix, right? Like something that has to be out yesterday because, customers are getting emailed 1,000 times for every case comment. They can do the releases. They just, they don't want to do it. I don't like doing the releases, but I can. And so that person we have they're what we call our release shepherd. So they're the one that takes our release and makes it go out to production. If you're not aware of a thing that Salesforce released in winter 16 called quick deployments, learn it, love it. With quick deployments, you can schedule a deployment. You can push a deployment out. You can deploy just a subset of your deployment, which then, as long as you run a subset of your test that meets the criteria for coverage of those things you're deploying, you can have it and it'll sit there for 5 days, I think 5, maybe 6, and there's a button under deployments that you say go, and it happens in under a minute. And so you can know without having to have somebody stay up. You know, if you're doing a nighttime deployment, you don't have to wait for somebody to stay up to run all the tests in your org and make sure everything happens. You can do that days in advance, you know, run all those tests and then wait for that quick deployment to say it was successful and it's just waiting for you. And then, you know, midnight on a Friday night, if you want to do your deployment, then you hit that button, you go to the bathroom, you go get a cup of coffee, and by the time you're back, it's done and everybody's happy. Also, quick deployment is great if you are doing any scheduled Apex, because if you've ever tried to deploy anything that touches scheduled Apex and that scheduled job is running, it's a pain in the butt. You can kind of navigate that with the quick deployment because you don't have to deploy all, like, your entire org. Like, we just deploy things that have changed. And so if we don't touch a scheduled class, it doesn't get deployed. And so therefore we don't have to deactivate it. We don't have to go through all that rigmarole. So I'm on my last slide. So I'm going to go back to his question about tooling. If you've ever been in a company especially a company with very nerdy people, they are very passionate about their tools. They will go to bat and they will die over switching a tool. There is no right tool. There is only the tool that works for you. See what I mean? Thank you for proving my point. Yes. Oh my goodness. You want to start a holy war, you talk about text editors. So we use Rally. We also have a team that uses Jira. We are in the middle of one of those holy wars about our team moving to Jira. So trust me, I know about these holy wars when it comes to switching tools. Find what works for your team. I don't care if you do planning in a text editor. I don't care if you do it in Google Drive. Find something that works for your team and stick with it. We use IRC internally because that's what everybody in the company uses, and we've used it for years, and we love it. We have had people saying, we should switch to Slack, and everybody on our team is like, no. And so, again, find what works and go with that.
Quick question on that. Have you heard of Agile Accelerator?
I have heard of it. I don't know really anything about it. So, okay. So there is in Salesforce Agile, I'm guessing Agile planning thing.
Right, it's what we use to develop our work.
Okay.
It's a separate topic, but yeah, I just wanted, if you need a third option.
Yeah.
You want
So
to stay on the platform.
if you want to stay on the platform, you can look at Agile Accelerator or any of, I guess there are probably dozens of other task and project management apps inside of Salesforce that you could always use that as well.
Candid opinion on pros, cons, relevance of Chatter?
So there was asked for a candid opinion on the pros and cons of Chatter. I will start by saying I am a terrible person to ask that question for. We have had Chatter in our org since the start of our org, or since Chatter was available for our org. We implemented it very badly and are finally starting to pick those pieces back up after rolling out code and trimming that way down. Chatter is fine. It's like any other thing. Personally, I think Chatter, the non-real-time Chatter part, fits more towards the non-real-time. I don't think it's a replacement for chat unless you're using the Chatter chat. Because, again, you don't have any real way to get that instant feedback. You may have somebody reply back, but I treat Chatter in that regards more as closer to email than I would as a real-time communication.
Just to say, we use Chatter a lot at our company, and it is like email. It's asynchronous. However, the ability to link it directly to a record for us is invaluable. So there's not this 4,000 email chain back and forth about what opportunity, what project. It's right there.
Yeah.
Like, take a look at this.
So for work on the platform, I'm sure it's great. I don't work in Salesforce. My day-to-day work is in a text editor. It is in Jenkins. It is in, and I forgot to mention those, Jenkins, Travis CI. It is in those tools. It is working on processes and building out things for our organization. So Chatter doesn't appeal to me personally because it doesn't fit well with my day-to-day work. So I will just leave it at that.
For folks who use Agile Accelerator, it's fantastic, because again, what Angela said, it's attaching to that record.
Yep. So to reiterate for the people who couldn't hear and for the camera back there, for those who are using Agile Accelerator, Chatter does hook into that. It lets you do all the record mentions and all that jazz. So it's good for that. But
Free with the enterprise above, too.
yes, and free with Enterprise and above.
You had mentioned that this is not a continuous integration talk, so my question is, do you give one of those and where can I get one?
I have given one at Dreamforce before. If you want, you can go to pecan.github.io, and I have the continuous integration talk there, and I will pull it up. What you want to see here? pecan.github.io. This has got links to my presentations as well as some other stuff that I've got under my presentations. I don't have this one. I will get it up here soon, but I have one for continuous integration and continuous deployment. If this doesn't give you enough information, if you're running a developer user group or something like that and you want something a little nicer, I have a Google Drive version of this presentation, the presentation for continuous deployment and continuous integration with notes. Feel free to contact me and I will get that out to whomever wants it.
2 questions. I'm sorry, what's that link again?
That is pecan.github.io.
Second question, how pure of a Agile Scrum process do you guys run?
So the question is, how pure of a agile Scrum process do we run? Probably not as pure as it should be. When we first started out, so I've been developing with this team on Salesforce for about 7 years now. We started out very strict. We followed all the guidelines and everything. Over the years, we have diverged a little bit because it was what's worked best with our team. And for the most part, we have the same developers and admins that we've had for the past 5+ years. So we're very comfortable with each other. I find sticking strictly to the agile methodologies works best when you have a young or unexperienced team or a team that doesn't know each other and hasn't been working with each other well for long, because it gives that structure that's needed for the younger teams. Okay, thank you guys.